Have you ever stopped to wonder whether the story you've been told about the origins of the Catholic Church is entirely accurate? For generations, many have accepted that the Church began with a man named Peter, the foremost apostle of Jesus. However, the true narrative is far more intricate, layered with historical twists and even some contradictions that may challenge everything you thought you knew about both religion and history. Consider for a moment the idea that the leadership of the Church wasn't solely decreed by Jesus himself, but was rather the result of collective decisions made by a small group of early believers. Imagine a band of scattered, often persecuted men and women meeting in secret. Individuals who, under constant threat and in an atmosphere of oppression, began to lay down the principles and structures that would one day evolve into one of the world's most influential institutions. Is it really conceivable that such an immense organization, which today has more than 1 billion adherents, could have arisen from a single pivotal event or from the initiative of one individual? The answer may well be more surprising than you expect. In the turbulent environment of ancient Rome, a city teeming with political intrigue, the worship of myriad pagan deities, and relentless persecution, the early Christians were not only fighting for their spiritual beliefs, but were also battling to simply survive. These first followers of Christ were not powerful or politically connected. They were often marginalized and hunted. And yet, against these formidable odds, they managed to transition from a fringe sect facing brutal repression to the state-endorsed religion of a vast empire. This dramatic transformation was not the product of mere chance or divine intervention. Rather, it was the result of a long, deliberate process marked by strategic planning, heated debates, and sometimes even ruthless decisions that diverged significantly from what might be considered the original teachings of Jesus. The commonly held view that Peter, revered today as the first pope, was singularly chosen to be the leader of this emerging faith is worth re-examining. The Bible recounts Jesus saying, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church," a statement that has long been interpreted as a divine endorsement of Peter's primacy. Yet, one must ask, does this declaration alone provide enough evidence to crown Peter as the sole founder of the church? Moreover, what exactly did Jesus mean by church? Was he referring to a physical structure, an organized institution, or perhaps something more abstract, a community of believers united by a shared message? Over the centuries, these words have been understood in many different ways, often leading to significant divisions among early Christians. It is also important to note that the term Catholic Church itself is not found in the earliest Christian writings. In fact, the word Catholic, meaning universal, was not used by the apostles but was introduced later, by Ignatius of Antioch around 107 AD. This raises a compelling question. If the earliest followers of Jesus never identified their community by this name, who then decided to call it Catholic, and why? To answer this, we must delve deeper into the formative years of Christianity. Envision a revolutionary movement driven by unlikely leaders, a diverse group including fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts, whose message ran counter to the established cultural and religious norms of their time. This radical new movement met with fierce resistance. Early Christians were often publicly executed in Roman arenas and labeled as heretics and enemies of the state. Yet, from these embattled beginnings, the community of believers not only survived but eventually managed to win the favor of the empire's most powerful figures. A pivotal turning point in this transformation was the conversion of Constantine the Great in the early 4th century. Far from being a simple act of religious awakening, Constantine's embrace of Christianity was a calculated political strategy. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized the practice of Christianity and ended the systematic persecution of its followers. This decree not only protected the believers, but also paved the way for Christianity to gain unprecedented influence. Many historians now argue that Constantine recognized early on the unifying power of the new faith and used it to strengthen his own rule over a fractious empire. The establishment of the modern Catholic Church truly began to take form during the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Here, under Constantine's watchful eye, Christian leaders convened to settle pressing theological questions, such as the nature of Jesus. Was he wholly divine, entirely human, or a unique combination of both? The debates and resolutions at Nicaea not only defined key elements of Christian theology, but also laid the groundwork for an institution that would go on to dominate politics, culture, and spirituality for centuries. Yet, the process was far from smooth or entirely spiritual. It was fraught with internal strife, betrayals, and even violent confrontations. Remarkably, many of the same believers who had once been persecuted by external authorities soon found themselves in conflict with one another, demonstrating that the formation of the church was as much about human ambition and power as it was about divine inspiration. This turbulent history invites us to question how much of the contemporary Catholic Church is truly derived from the original teachings of Jesus, and how much has been molded by centuries of political decisions and human intervention. Have you ever wondered why some doctrines are accepted while others are dismissed, or why certain writings were enshrined in the Bible while others were cast aside? Before the Bible was compiled into the form we recognize today, there existed a multitude of gospels, letters, and narratives, each vying to capture the essence of Christian belief. Leaders from different regions of the Roman Empire gathered to decide which texts should be deemed authoritative and which should be rejected, basing their decisions on a complex mix of political, theological, and pragmatic criteria. The outcome was not merely a spiritual consensus, but rather an ideological battle that determined which version of Christianity would prevail. Adding to this complexity, some early Christians held views that were radically different from those that later became mainstream. For instance, the Gnostics argued that secret knowledge, rather than blind faith, was the key to understanding the divine. They even proposed that the God of the Old Testament was a lesser, tyrannical figure, a stark contrast to the benevolent, loving image of God taught by Jesus. Had these ideas gained the upper hand, the trajectory of Christianity might have been entirely different. In an effort to consolidate doctrinal unity, the Council of Nicaea and other subsequent gatherings actively suppressed these divergent voices. Many texts considered heretical were systematically destroyed, only to be rediscovered centuries later, such as the Gnostic Gospels unearthed in Nag Hammadi in 1945, which offer an entirely different perspective on early Christian thought, one in which intellectual diversity was once the norm. Another intriguing point of discussion is the role of Peter in the early church. Although tradition holds that Peter was the indisputable first pope and the bedrock upon which the church was built, historical accounts provide a more ambiguous picture. In the Acts of the Apostles, Peter is indeed a prominent figure, yet he is not portrayed as the sole leader. In fact, at the Council of Jerusalem, a critical early gathering, it appears that James, the brother of Jesus, occupied a more central role. This discrepancy suggests that the notion of Peter as the singular rock upon which the church was founded may be more the result of later theological interpretations and institutional narratives than of clear historical fact. The story of Christianity's rise is also deeply intertwined with the power and symbolism of Rome itself. Although Jesus lived and died in Jerusalem, Rome eventually became the epicenter of the Christian world. As the capital of an empire renowned for its power and authority, Rome offered more than just spiritual legitimacy. It provided the political backing that allowed the church to expand its influence across vast territories. However, this close association with imperial power was not without its complications. The development of the church was riddled with internal power struggles. Episodes such as the Western Schism, when multiple claimants to the papacy vied for control, remind us that even the most revered institutions are ultimately composed of fallible human beings with their own ambitions and weaknesses. Even Constantine's conversion to Christianity, often hailed as a turning point in religious history, is subject to scrutiny. Although he publicly embraced the faith and enacted policies that favored Christians, his actions were as much about securing political power as they were about personal belief. Notably, Constantine maintained some pagan practices throughout his life and was baptized only on his deathbed, a fact that continues to fuel debate about the sincerity of his conversion. In the final analysis, the creation of the Catholic Church was not the product of a single moment or the vision of one man, but the culmination of centuries of evolution, debate, and power struggles. While figures like Peter and the apostles laid the initial groundwork, it was the later councils, imperial decrees, and complex human decisions that truly defined the Church's character. The Catholic Church, with all its contradictions and complexities, has indelibly shaped the history, culture, and spirituality of billions of people worldwide. This historical journey invites us to reflect on the nature of our most enduring institutions. Is the Church purely a divine revelation, or is it a human construct, a blend of heavenly inspiration and earthly ambition? As you ponder these questions, consider that even the greatest institutions are born not solely from moments of clarity, but also from struggles, compromises, and the indomitable human spirit. What do you believe? Is the Church a flawless embodiment of divine will, a human creation fraught with imperfections, or perhaps a complex amalgam of both?